Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 55 for June 30th, 2017. Hey everyone, Danny Rubino here, joined again by Zach Bowden for another semi-exciting, I gotta really build the show up more. It's super exciting podcast for Windows Central. If you're new to us, we cover Microsoft in the consumer space. So we talk about Xbox and PCs and Surfaces and of course Windows 10 and all the things happening there, both current and future. So it's a good way to basically get into the ecosystem if you're a total nerd or you're not a nerd. You just want to know what's going on in the magical world of Microsoft. Zach, how are you doing this fine?
I am not too bad. How are you?
Well, we finished half of 2017. It feels like forever. It's so weird, though, that it's still 2017, and we're going to start gearing up for 2018. I don't know. The older you get, the weirder that gets, because it's just like, I sound like when I say 2017, I still feel like I'm talking in the future. Like, wow, could you imagine year 2017?
You know, I just realized tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary at Windows Central.
Oh, we'll do nothing for you. So.
Hey, thanks, everyone. Awesome.
This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about, of course, some new Windows 10 builds that came out that weren't all that exciting, but still interesting. We'll talk about the App Store sale. So for those of you who don't know, the Windows Store is having a big game sale that they do annually where you can buy all sorts of cool stuff. We'll talk about what we're getting. Well, I'm bought, what Zach bought. We're also going to talk about Centennial Apps in the store. So this is a continuation of a story we've been doing for a while now, talking about the progress of getting classic Win32 apps into the new Windows Store and the process there. Just some new announcements around that. I briefly talked about my Matebook X review, which went live today. If you're unfamiliar with that, go check it out. But we'll go more in depth about that device because it's very exciting. I really enjoy Huawei's stuff. Let's talk about the Windows source code leak. So this was the biggest story that turned out not to be the biggest story. And early on, we were saying this wasn't a big story, but we'll talk about put it in context and explain exactly what happened and what it means and what it wasn't. And then finally, we'll talk about the Surface Mini, a device that's been as rumored as the Surface phone. Surface Mini, though, was confirmed to exist. In fact, we have photos now, and we actually shared those today. And Zach's going to fill us in on what that device is, what it was, why it's unimpressive in 2017, but I don't know, maybe what the future holds for such a device. All right, let's go to those builds, Zach. Tell us what happened this week with the Insider program.
So another week, another set of Insider Preview builds for PC and mobile. The mobile one, as always, nothing really noteworthy changing, apart from they fixed a bunch of more stuff. And one of the noteworthy changes in that changelog for mobile was they did general improvements in reliability of phones by fixing top crash issues. So I guess that means, to be fair, honest to God though, my phone feels like it's been running a bit better with the new build, so I'm actually quite pleased with that. And they also improved battery performance by fixing some bug with the camera app, which is also pretty nice. But that's pretty much the most noteworthy changes for mobile. On desktop, there were some new features, nothing really consumer-facing, more businessy and for security reasons and stuff. So build 16232 for PC. Has Windows Defender Application Guard improvements. You can now start a new application guard window within Microsoft Edge, which is nice, and that, protects you when you're web browsing and whatever else. Great for enterprises and whatever else. You can now, what else can you do? There's now exploit protection, which Microsoft says after hearing feedback from insiders, they're announcing that starting with this build, you can now audit, configure, and manage Windows systems and application exploit mitigation settings right from the Windows Defender Security Center. So again, if you're a security nerd, that probably sounds amazing to you, but to me, I'm snoring at the keyboard.
I'm starting to fall asleep too.
Then there was also controlled folder access in Windows Defender Antivirus. This is apparently a thing that many people are excited about. Basically, Microsoft is making it easier for you to protect valuable data from malicious apps and threats, such as ransomware. To enable the feature, search for and open the Windows Defender Security Center from start, go to the virus and threats protection settings, and then set the switch to on. What it does is it monitors the changes that apps make to files in certain protected folders. So if there's a rogue app installed on your device and it's editing a protected folder or something, you can see that and then stop it, or if it's okay to do that, then allow it to continue. So again, another nice security improvement, but that's pretty much it on the feature front for that build. So it wasn't not as big as the last two builds that were released to insiders, but still pretty nice for those of you who are into security and are big on keeping your devices secure.
I'm just thinking people are like, someone's listening going, yeah, I'm into security.
I mean, I guess we should all be into security, especially with the whole like ransomware stuff as of late. But sure. I just can't get into it. Just someone work on it and then just make my computer secure for me. That's all I care about.
Well, they're getting there. It's a much safer world for PC, especially, if you're using Windows 10. That's still the issue, right? A lot of people, there's still... I still like going to comments of other sites and Reddits and stuff like that where people are just like, they just do not want Windows 10. There's still this, the telemetry, the telemetry. Like it's just, how dare, and I get it, and I'm not saying, of course, I do want to address this. I mean, people should be, on top of what information Microsoft does collect. And, it's good that people collect that information. It is important. At the same time, though, we do live in a world where people want convenience and safety, and there's only so many ways you can do that while making a system secure. So, but yeah, always good stuff. I'm running this build on Surface Studio. So far, no major complaints. I do find like a lot of little bug fixes in this one compared to the last build, so that's pretty good. But yeah, a little bit, I would say disappointing that there was no new features. However, those last two builds were pretty momentous. So it feels a little greedy.
We are still waiting for Microsoft to introduce Timeline, which is something that they announced for Redstone 3, as well as the Cloud Clipboard, which is something they also announced. Those two things aren't in any of the builds yet. I know they are working on Timeline. I've actually had a little go on Timeline, but I haven't actually had a chance to play with the Cloud Clipboard stuff yet. I'm not even sure how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be through Cortana or if it will be simply right-click and copy something, then that's just saved to the cloud. I honestly have no idea how it's going to work, but hopefully that arrives in time for Redstone 3.
Definitely. So that's it for that build. Probably not going to be much for next week either. It will be interesting next week for those who don't follow U.S. holidays. July 4th is on Tuesday, which is actually kind of a convenient day. That means most of us are going to try to ride out this entire weekend. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply for me. I have one of those jobs where, I work pretty much all the time. So I will try to take off Tuesday, though, and actually going to a friend's annual barbecue. So, but don't look for build probably next week. If they do one, that would be kind of interesting. Oh, we should also say mobile got a build, too, which was, interesting. I'm actually flash my Elite X3, and it's brand spanking new, and it's running the latest insider build, and it gets better. I don't know what to say. Like I'm using it, I'm like, oh, this is actually still kind of fun. Like I don't know. They're definitely making things. They did some things to improve battery life regarding photos and fix a couple of crashes. So it is what it's supposed to be, right? The feature 2 branch. They're basically fine tuning stuff, which snore boring, but at the same time, it's like. It's kind of a fun device still to use. Even though we're in this weird transition stage where there won't be any more phones anytime soon, they're clearly tweaking things and trying to, keep the experience. Well, I have to admit, one of my best friends, been a Windows Phone user forever, really reluctant, finally went and got the One Touch 5 this week, switching to Android. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that, so I've been saying for a long time, if there's nothing there for them to buy, people are going to switch eventually.
I mean, even I'm feeling that pinch. It's like, the 950, it's just not doing it for me anymore. I need something new. It's been like almost 2 years at this point. And the Alcatel, speaking of, the Alcatel Idol 4 Pro is now available for pre-order in Germany. So it's finally coming to Europe. Still not available here in the UK though, so I'm still out of luck for now. Hopefully they do bring it to the UK. But if you are a Windows Phone user and you understand the risks and the consequences of being a Windows Phone user and are looking for a new phone, the Alcatel Idol 4 Pro is definitely a recommended one by me because it's a nice premium consumer facing.
The quality hardware, it's very good hardware on that, and the camera, while not amazing, is decent. It's a pretty good camera. It's been improved significantly, but the hardware, it's a really premium feeling phone. It's probably the nicest feeling Windows Phone there ever was, which says a lot. But that's that. Let's talk about the App Store sale. So there's a lot of games. We have them on Windows Central. You can also go to the Windows Store and get these. But they do this every year. It's pretty awesome. It's something you want to. It's kind of like Steam; they do their annual sale as well. So basically, in the Windows Store and on Xbox, a lot of major titles are getting big discounts. If you're a Gold Pass user, you get even more discount on top of that, which I thought was pleasantly surprised. Zach and I were joking around before this podcast about how a lot of the stuff that's on sale, we're like, oh, yeah, we already own that. And it's just subtle reminders that we need to actually play those games because we are in that camp of people who are like buy games with the intention of playing them and rarely have the chance. In fact, I missed you guys playing Hot Wheels this week, even though it was my idea to play Hot Wheels.
Actually, it was technically Zoe's idea to play Hot Wheels.
Oh, right, yeah, Zoe. Right.
So, but basically, remember if you guys remember Zoe.ai, that AI from Microsoft, it works in GroupMe, and we have a GroupMe on Windows Central. We added it to our group, and we just use it to make decisions for us now.
Yes, yeah, she's pretty saucy. But yeah, some good games. I bought the Capcom versus Marvel. Just because those twin stick, arcade fighter kind of games have always just been kind of fun. I just like picking them up. And I love the graphics. They look like they're going to induce seizures, but I just thought it looked like a fun game. I also finally got Super Hot, and I haven't played it yet, of course. Intentions. But Super Hot, if you haven't followed that one, that's a really popular game that came out, I don't know, a year or two ago, and it was on Steam and on PC. And it's a very, the art on it is like very cool. It's very minimalist, and it's a different style of first-person shooter. It's actually very good. You were talking about City Lines, which is also a very popular game. Jez loves this one. That's also on the store for Windows 10. And you just bought that, correct?
Yeah, I saw it in the sale, and I was like, oh, I have that on Xbox One. I already have it on Steam as well, actually. But since I like being on the Microsoft ecosystem, I thought since it's on sale now, I might as well grab it on the Windows Store as well. Fortunately, it's not a Play Anywhere title, but
yes.
I still got it anyway. I do like City Skylines is a great game. If you like the old SimCity games, this is basically that but better. It's really awesome.
Yeah, So this is one of those games I'm tempted to buy, but I know I'll never play because this is a game you can't just pick up and play, right?
You got to sit down.
You got to commit to that.
Yeah.
I just find humans super fascinating. They're like, I live in a giant city. I live in the real world. But what would be cool if I could have a game where I could just make a city and manage things like traffic? like to me, that's just like insane. And there's a subreddit for this game. That's how popular it is. And people just share their designs, and it's insane because these cities are so huge and complicated. And they work on things like just all the infrastructure stuff, and it just cracks me up that that's fun for people. Mm-hmm. But it would seem like a tedious thing. It's just like, was it Farm Simulator? We're joking around about that. That's on sale too.
I don't get the craze about that game now. When it first came out, that game was laughed at for being so terrible as a simulator. But now people play it like religiously. It's crazy. It's crazy how that game turned its reputation around.
Yeah. So someone mentioned Cuphead, which is in the store. Yes, and Cuphead's not coming out till September, but you can pre-order it now. It goes for $20, which, well, Zach was joking around on Twitter. He doesn't think that's worth it. Now, I think $20 for this game is awesome because it is a Play Anywhere title. So you'll get that on PC and Xbox. The artwork, of course, is absolutely astonishing. It's hand-drawn to make look like a 1920s or 1930s cartoon. And it's just a very exciting game. Now, of course, no one's reviewed this game yet, so who knows? It could be a terrible thing. But for $20 for this type of title, I'm pretty excited about that. It's cool because if you pre-order it now, it downloads like a little file, and you get the live tile. It just sits there. It's a cool live tile, right? So, but definitely go check out Cuphead. If you don't buy it today, just think about it. We'll revisit it in September, of course. But I think that's a really good deal. But overall, though, some pretty good sales going on. We should also mention that the game section in the Windows 10 store has been revised slightly for design, and I like this a lot better. I think it looks way more serious. So previously, when you would open the store for games, and you still do see like Bejeweled and what were mobile PC games, right? Things that also were on phone, but on, you can get them on your computer too. But these are very light, casual games. And of course, there's room for that, the casino and card games, all that kind of stuff. But the store now is growing to the point where we're getting serious PC games on there. A lot of Xbox games, the Forzas, the Gears of War stuff is on there. Things like Cuphead and these new indie games. And now they finally created a section for games for PC, I think it's called. And it's just like, it shows, I don't know, when you open it now and you look at it, you're like, oh, there's some serious stuff coming out there. And I actually like this idea this revision. I just think the store looks a little bit more professional. It looks less like crapware, So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do like the changes. It's good to see Microsoft finally surfacing the good games and the actual games in the Windows Store, especially for PC games. Apparently, the Windows Store, if it will detect if you have a graphics card capable of playing the PC games, and if you don't, it won't show that area for you. I mean, you can still search for those games if you want to still find that page and buy it, but it won't recommend them on the front page if you don't have a PC that can run them, which I think is a really nice change. The thing that annoys me about Microsoft's kind of strategy with games on the Windows Store is that for some of them, they keep putting them on Steam, like the Halo games, Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2. They came to the Windows Store, which is where it makes sense. It is a Microsoft IP. And then a few months later, they added them to Steam, and now everyone just buys them on Steam and plays them there. I don't see why they keep doing that, and I hope that they don't do it for Halo 6, because obviously, with Microsoft's Play Anywhere program now, the Halo 6 will obviously be in the Windows Store, as will every first party Microsoft game from here on out. So if they bring that to the Windows Store and then bring it to Steam a few months later, I feel like that kills any momentum the Windows Store could possibly have with any of the games in there.
Possibly. There's definitely it's a tough play how they're going to differentiate themselves from Steam, because they have two options. They could just take on Steam, or they can try to differentiate themselves from Steam. And how they go about doing that. And like, okay, so say they go to second route, that they're going to differentiate, which is probably the smarter idea. It's like, okay, so what are your plays there to do that? And I think, the Play Anywhere, of course, is definitely an enticement for people. But we've discussed in the past how it's not like they can just go and tell like Capcom or, some of these, bigger companies, be like, hey, that game you want to release, make it play anywhere.
Yeah.
Like they can't. Those are deals that need to be negotiated. They got to talk companies into it, basically, and so that's a process that needs to be figured out. For me, it's convenience, because I don't like downloading Steam. I don't like the Steam client running in the background. I don't find anything about that system elegant. I feel like it's all just been a kludge for them. Like they just built it out. Whereas the store, to me, I love getting updates through the store. I love buying stuff through the store with my account. I don't know. For me, it's about convenience, and they need to figure out sort of how they're going to do that. It's a tough play, but it's starting to make progress. Speaking of, we can work into the Centennial Apps. So we've been talking about this for a while now. If you don't know, the Centennial Bridge is this part of this bridge series that Microsoft is working on. It's about how to help developers take their existing IP and bring it to the Windows Store. Because, again, you have two options there. You can not bring it to the store, or you can convert your app to a native UWP and put it in the store that way. That second choice is nice. A lot of companies probably won't do that unless they see necessarily investment and a guaranteed return on it. So what Microsoft did was create a bunch of bridges. Centennial is one of those. It allows devs to take older Win32 apps, the ones you download off the web, in an executable. You double click it, it goes to that setup screen. It allows you to take those apps, put them into the store. And all it really does is it kind of wraps it in an AppX wrapper. And then there's some little API calls here and there, but what it does is it's a silo download from the store, and this thing installs, but it doesn't do registry writing. It creates a fake registry within it, which is kind of cool, because when you uninstall that app, it doesn't leave anything behind. Obviously, you get more security there. You also get guaranteed app updates. Now, we've talked about this in the past. iTunes is coming in the next few months. Spotify is now in the store. We have Adobe Elements. We have Evernote. We have a bunch of these apps, and that's one side of making Centennial successful. The other side, though, is getting these small apps that people have used for a long time into that store, and that we haven't heard too much about. But we're starting to see movement now. It started, I think, back with Crystal Diskmark, which, if you don't know, it's a simple benchmarking app. Everybody in the PC business uses it. It's been around forever. It's free. That's in the store now. Flux is also been around forever. It changes your screen for nighttime usage. That's now in the store. And then this week we heard Paint.net he's going to release one more update, and then he's putting all his energy and bringing the bridge for the Windows Store, which I'm curious, because I don't think it's going to take him a lot of effort to do this. Now, Paint.net's been around for, I don't know, I want to say almost 20 years. If you don't know, it's take MS Paint and merge it with like Adobe Photoshop, and that's kind of what this thing is. And people have used it for a very long time because it's free and it's very powerful. So that's going to come to the store. And then we also heard of Ifron View. It's such a weird name. Another photo viewer that's been around forever. And that is now actually in the store. You can go download that. So I find this really exciting. I don't know, Zach, what do you think about this stuff?
Honestly, any app coming to... I wrote about this last week, I think, when Spotify came to the store. Every app developer should be taking advantage of the Windows Store. It puts your app front and center in front of 500 million Windows 10 users from a click of a button on the taskbar, and there's your app, pretty much. And it's just convenient, and more developers should be taking advantage of the Centennial App Bridge. And this last week, we've seen almost an explosion of developers say yes, we are doing this, which is really, really encouraging. Now, I know it's not very encouraging for those of you who are interested in true universal Windows apps, but that's a bit of a long play. That's definitely not something that's going to happen overnight. For now, this is kind of like a stepping stone for developers to just get their apps in the store. We might as well make it easier for them to get into the store now and then work on a truer universal app down the line, rather than have nothing in there for 5-10 years and then, hey, here's our UWP app, which we've been working on for however many years. So I definitely prefer this method. It's good to see. I'm still hoping to see a lot more in the store over time. Chrome is the big one, obviously. I think there's some rules in the Windows Store Microsoft needs to change for that to happen first. But I think once we've got Chrome in the store, for most people, the store is good enough.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before, obviously, in the context of Surface Laptop and Windows 10s, which is there's going to be a threshold where once you get enough of these apps in the store, users will be like, well, that's pretty much everything I need. Mm-hmm. And that number is surprisingly low. I realize there is that guy out there who has a desktop and has like 64 icons. And, but I'm talking about your average user probably downloads less. I would say even 10 apps that are executable would be a lot. I mean, you got your browser, maybe some Adobe products, and then maybe there's like your paint.net or something you just use for 10 years, and it's just that thing you love to have. And it's going to be those little ones that are going to really matter in the long term. But honestly, this bar of making this successful is actually kind of low. You need a few key apps and obviously more attention to this. And we've talked about this before too. This is also just two parts. It's not just getting devs go, hey, put this in there. It's about Microsoft getting the APIs to allow devs. So a lot of apps that we may want in there right now technically can't happen because this bridge is not done. It's like watching a bridge being built. So that too will take time. And as that bridge becomes more powerful, these new APIs will come out. A developer will, oh, now my app will finally work with this. I can actually do this now because it has the calls I need to use. And then they can actually do that. So as Zach said, long-term plan. For what people don't know, UWP, the Universal Windows Platform, it's an ongoing project. It's no different than what Win32 is today. Like we look at Win32 now and it's like, I don't know, was it 30 years almost? 20 years? I don't know. But it's like, it's where we are already looking at the entire ecosystem of apps out there. That took a long time to get to that point. So you can't take all that, condense it to 2 years and go, well, how come the Windows 10 system's failing? No, it's like that. They're building a new platform up. It's going to take time. And I feel like now getting these smaller apps in that store, for me, getting like Flux in there, Crystal Dismark, and a couple of these other ones were like big deals because I actually do use those. There's one that I still don't use. I use that's on the store, DNS Jumper, which I've written about before. It's a good app, freeware that dynamically changes your DNS and it kind of helps with browsing and stuff like that. But again, those little things, hopefully we'll see that stuff happen.
People also need to realize that not every app will come to the Windows Store in the entire lifespan of Windows 10's existence. I mean, sure, a lot of them probably will over time, but not everybody's going to want to. For one, I don't think Steam will ever be in the Windows Store. It doesn't make sense because basically that's putting a store within a store. Steam is a store. It's not it also is a client for games or whatever else, but it's also a store. It doesn't make sense for Valve to have Steam in the Windows Store, unless, of course, Microsoft in the future comes up with a universal Windows 10 that's only available via a store. So there's locks you to the store for everyone. Then in that case, then developers may not have a choice. But I don't. And if for as long as Windows,
so it makes a point that iTunes is also a store.
That's true. Yeah, no, you are right. But I still can you see Steam coming to the store? I honestly can't.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, this comes down always to two plays. Like, for instance, like look at iTunes again. Microsoft could have been like, no iTunes, we're doing Groove. Groove is our thing. But since we've seen zero advertising for Groove, we even joked around how there's not a Twitter account for them. It's Groove is such a weird thing. It's such a powerful program, but it's still not like they're not standing behind it against iTunes. So in that instance, they said, sorry, Groove, we're going to allow iTunes in the store. When it comes to their browser, though, they seem to take a little bit more of a hard line, right? They're saying Edge and no other browsers are allowed in the store. And so they're saying, okay, Edge may not be perfect today, but we're going to stand behind our team and we're going to make it perfect. So that's that line. Now, could they reverse that? Of course they could, right? They can make exceptions anytime. And I'm sure if Google came to them like, all right, guys, let's talk. Let's get and I heard there's some limitations with Chrome as far as updaters and things running in the background that may need to be changed to allow this to happen. But Chrome is a pretty modular browser. You know, you have Chromium, which is the actual base of it that could be stripped out and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. These, I feel, are decisions they sit back and they go case by case. So I think they could make the exception for Steam. I think if they, they said we're gonna, this will outweigh. But yeah, I don't know, because then there's this issue too, right? With Steam, you allow it in the store and you buy a game through Steam. Microsoft doesn't get a cut of it, so then it's sort of like. I don't know.
And then also, how does the update for that game you downloaded through Steam get handled? Is it through the Windows Store? Or is it through Steam?
It'll probably be through Steam, because you can, like, things like Flux run in the taskbar. So you can have apps that just start up with Windows 10 and run in the taskbar behind the scenes that are still store apps. So that could happen.
Well, maybe Steam could come to the Windows Store then. I was talking to Adobe recently about the Windows Store and the Universal Platform or whatever else, and they were committed to not bringing their apps to the Windows Store right now. I did ask them, and they were like, "Well, no, we're fine with the Creative Cloud suite and that program. Where our customers like it." That's what they told me, which I don't know if that was complete PR rubbish or whatever, but. They're not planning to bring their programs to the Windows Store anytime soon. Even the Adobe XD app, which is a true universal Windows app, isn't coming to the Windows Store. They're going to offer that through their own Creative Cloud program, which is an interesting thing, because it is a Windows 10 app. It's not a executable that runs on Windows 7.
Right. And that's something we never really talked about or have seen before, and someone was just mentioning that, about how you don't have to make an AppX file, the universal Windows, that's their the code for it. So AppX can be Centennial, it could be native UWP, but you don't need to actually put that in the store. You can actually just host it on your site. A Windows 10 user can click that and it would still install that way. And so that sounds like what Adobe's doing, which is lame. Yeah. Adobe's one of those companies where it's just like, I feel like we use their products because we just kind of have to. There's not much else. Like, we use Photoshop because it's Photoshop. But yeah, I can't stand Creative Cloud. I don't like the management. I hate the idea of, like, I log into the website. Oh, you want to download this app? Okay, cool. Download this app to download this app. And I'm just like, come on, just give me the app. Like, for me, it's super frustrating. Especially, I don't know. I hope Adobe changes their tune, but
I mean, I'm sure at some point they will, once the Windows Store sees the numbers rise and whatever else. Also, thinking of the Chrome in the store thing, it would probably benefit Microsoft if it was in the store, in the sense that even though they're no longer using Edge or whatever else, what you could do, because obviously with a Windows 10 machine, if you want to download Chrome, you need to go through Edge to get Chrome. What they could do is, if you download Chrome, it has a little pop up that says, I see you downloading Chrome. Click here to download Chrome, but it takes you to the Windows Store and just downloads it through there. That would get more people just using the Windows Store anyway. It would pop it up on the screen and people will see that it exists. And it might encourage more people to just use it. So maybe Chrome in the Windows Store would be more beneficial than harmful.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird process. I still would like to see more Windows Store. I still see a lot of app commercials, and there is almost never the Windows Store. Because I think a lot of these companies are still like, oh, well, you're on a PC, just use the browser, go to our website kind of thing. And it'll be interesting and that goes into the whole thing about, well, apps probably aren't going to, for a lot of services won't stick around for very long because this model is shifting.
Well, so isn't that the whole argument that apps aren't going to be a thing soon?
Yeah, I mean, it is annoying to have this many microservices trying to make your life simpler. It's just like, I got a company that sends me clothes. I got a company that sends me food. Another one that does. It's just like it gets very complicated after a little while. And yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how this stuff kind of pans out. But yeah, that's the Windows Store. Hopefully, it's getting better. That's the good news.
Yeah.
It's still a long way to go though before it's a true replacement. I guess we'll talk next about my Matebook X review. So, for those who don't know, Huawei, they make cell phones, smartphones. Came on the scene a couple years ago, one of the largest companies in China for electronics. Not very familiar, though, to Western audiences. That's sort of changed. You might have heard of some of the Huawei phones over the last few years, always Android-based. And they make premium hardware now. They're not a company that's shy of going, they basically said, we're going to compete with the iPhone, and that's our goal. So they're very ambitious. Last year, they got involved into Windows 10, and they released the Huawei Matebook, which I reviewed. It is I forgot the size of it. I think it was a 10-inch or 12-inch tablet. And it was a true tablet, right? This was it was beautiful, too. Very thin bezels. It was white with gold. Very premium hardware with excellent audio. Had a fingerprint reader, and then it had a kind of a floppy folio case that went with it that also had a keyboard. And it was, a little bit mixed reaction to that. I liked the keyboard, but it was a little floppy. Still felt really nice and premium. I gave a very good review. That device is back this year, so that's coming out in, I believe, July. And it has some revisions, upgrade the processor, change the hardware up. The keyboard is now better. It's chiclet style. And so that's part of that's called Matebook E now. And the reason they did that is because now they have a new Matebook line. So there's also Matebook X and also Matebook D, which is, I believe, a 15-inch more gaming kind of laptop, which hopefully we'll get around to. But the Matebook X is fascinating. This is a company that's basically said, we're going to make a MacBook for Windows 10 users. And that may sound derivative to people, but at the same time, there really isn't. We're getting very good quality hardware now. I've always talked about the Spectre X360, XPS 13, of course, you have your Surface stuff. But this device, the Huawei Matebook X, is super impressive. It's a true 13-inch laptop, which again, we're not 13.3, but 13. It does the 3:2 aspect ratio, which I'm a huge fan of. I know a lot of you guys listening to this are a huge fan of it. That's what Surface uses. For me, that's the resolution going forward. HP is getting on board with this now. The companies now are finally starting to go, okay, because 16:9 has its uses. I know some people are going to love 16:9. I think for business uses, it makes some sense. Consumers, I think 3:2 is nice. But it's just a really nice laptop. It's 2.3 pounds. It's so thin that the headphone jack couldn't make this any thinner and still keep a headphone jack. And it has a Core i5 and Core i7 processor. Okay, but it's completely fanless, which is insane. And they're pretty good processors. The same one used in the Surface laptop. And I didn't even show this, by the way. I almost forgot, but it's a spill-proof keyboard. And my friend, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Mobile, he has a video review of this, and he actually spills seltzer onto it, and it held up. I don't know. Did you get to see the review of this device, Zach?
I did see your review. Yeah, it's a lovely looking device, very gorgeous looking. Although you did mention it creaks slightly, which kind of turned me off a little bit.
Yeah, so it's not a big deal. It's one of those, if you're trying to force it and bend it and twist it a little bit, you can hear just a little creak here and there. And I believe it has to do with the display and probably the glues that they use. Because a lot of these, they use glues now. There's obviously screws in the device too, but that's how they're getting around making everything kind of seamless. But I didn't consider it a big deal. But it goes to show you that as good as the premium quality of this device is, they're still learning, right? I think though, for a Gen 1 device, this is their first attempt at a laptop, I'm blown out of the water. I mean, most companies don't just create a laptop this good on their first try, especially since this isn't like a white label, meaning they didn't take this isn't like a generic chassis. Like they engineered this, they made this, right? Just like how Microsoft makes a Surface from scratch. And the fact that they brought things like a Core i5 processor, it's got Dolby tuned Atmos speakers in it. Now they're dual stereo speakers. They sit in the top deck behind the keyboard and between a display. But Dolby actually worked with them. They put dampeners on them. They have like amplifiers, and it gets so loud. It gets too loud that like I would never play it that loud. But at that volume, so there was no distortion. The software is also Dolby Atmos. And so if you plug in headphones too, you get very good spatial surround sound stuff. This is no joke. I mean, it's easily the best audio I've seen on any laptop. And if you enjoy watching like TV or movies, it's a great experience. That display, I forgot the resolution. It's basically a 2K display. So it's like 2140 by something, just because that weird aspect ratio. Now it's non-touch. That makes a lot of people upset. I get it. But this device is so thin and light that that's the one thing that they cut back on. But it's a beautiful display. It reminds me of HP's displays where they're not so contrasty or like AMOLEDs I've talked about before. AMOLED screens on laptops look amazing. And then you use them for a couple hours and your eyes start to bug out. And I don't get that here. This actually filters out blue light naturally. And so it just, you can stare at it all day. It's a really thing. Good keyboard on it, full chiclet keys, good travel, 1.2 millimeters. So it's shallow, but it's not terrible. Fisher was actually way more, he said he liked the keyboard a whole lot. He had no problems with it. For me, it was a little bit more shallow than I'm used to, but I didn't mind typing on it. But yeah.
Battery life is also of a slight concern with this, right?
Good point. Yeah. So some sacrifices need to be made with such a device. And the battery life's okay. So the battery life is what was considered good 2 years ago, maybe, or a year ago, right? So 6, maybe 7 hours for the Core i5. Now, I didn't find it like, for me, I could still go out and use this all day and still be fine with it. But I get how it is on the low end, right, for what a 2017 laptop is. However, this thing is like this size. It's slightly bigger than a magazine. So if you have a magazine in front of you, just put that down. This thing is just like a smidge longer. That's how small it is. It's just like, it's so thin and light, but it's also dense feeling, right? Because you can feel that they packed a lot onto it. But yeah, you can't have everything. Also, I mentioned how the CPU, because it's fanless, it never gets hot. It only got to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it was never uncomfortable. But the reason is because when it reached a certain temperature, they were throttling the CPU down a bit so it doesn't get too hot. So they traded comfort up, but it means if you want to use this for gaming, you're no way. Because after about 10 minutes, this thing drops to about 2 gigahertz as opposed to 3.1 gigahertz. Now, for anyone using this for streaming media, especially video, because video now is with the Intel Kaby Lakes just put onto the GPU, not the processor. Now, is that good for battery life? It doesn't generate heat. So streaming video is amazing. Doing photo editing works fine. Word processing is fine. Running anything from the Windows Store is fine. All that is fine. You're not going to notice anything with the processor. If you want to play like Asheron's Call, though, for a half hour, yeah, you're going to notice some issues. So, but this wasn't designed for that. This is designed for the professional, the student, the writer who wants a thin, light, really beautiful looking laptop to take with them to the coffee shop without weighing them down.
So I'd say the Surface laptop also targets that very same demographic. Yes. Which one would you recommend to users?
So Surface laptop, same configuration, $200 more expensive. For some people, that's a big difference. Other people, they'll say, well, the Surface Pro, though, or the Surface laptop, that $200 is worth it to me. You know, they're similar devices. Surface laptop's display is 13.5 inches, so it's a little bit bigger. You know, it's a little more premium feeling than this one. This one also has 2 Type-C ports, no Type-A. They do give you a dongle in the box, which actually has a couple ports on it for HDMI, VGA, I believe Ethernet, and Type-A. So they give you that solution. It's not Thunderbolt, though. So one side is power, only one side. The other side is data and display. So it works well for it. So you got to consider that. You know, like you hate the Surface laptop because it doesn't have Type-C. This is your answer, although it goes in that other direction, only Type-C. But I'd say they're both up there. You know, the Surface laptop the quality is just better. It's more consistent. It's $200 more, and I'm not sure you also get a touchscreen, you know, but it's, Matebook's 2.3 pounds. It's a half pound lighter, you know, so it's like, it's not insignificant. They're both great devices. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it is pretty tough. I do like the look of the Matebook a little bit more than the Surface laptop.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a chance to actually play with one, so I can't make an actual judgment. But yeah, look, very nice review. It looks like a really awesome laptop. It's not got a touchscreen, has it? Which is a surprise to me. No touch.
Yep, no touchscreen. Yeah, I mean, because it would have added a thickness to it. Yeah, I should mention the bezels on this are thinner than apparently the XPS 13, which is bizarre. It's like 0.44 millimeters. It's stupid thin. Like it's so thin that the front facing camera is only 1 megapixel. It's actually better than I kind of thought it was. Now in low light, it's not amazing, but it actually works pretty well for what it is. So yeah, again, sacrifices. But if you hate display bezels, this is your device. I mean, I'm just saying, even if you're not in the market for this, right? Like I'm a gamer, or I need a touchscreen. Just appreciate the fact that this company went out and made this on. They made super thin bezels, fanless design, Dolby Atmos speakers, and it just it works well. It's a great experience. I didn't even mention the fingerprint reader. So it's got the fingerprint reader built into the power button. It's a beautiful, nice little round button that sits in the corner. It's very obvious. It's you're never going to miss it. But what's neat was, normally how this works is if your computer is completely off or it's in hibernate mode, you open up the display and you're going to touch that power button, and then you're going to watch the little spinny dots, and then Windows will, come back to life. It's going to go to the login screen, and then you're on the login screen and you would touch that power button again because it's a fingerprint reader. Now it unlocks your device, you're good to go. That's how it normally would work. Huawei said, we can make this easier. So when you turn it on, you hit that power button for the first time, it's actually holding your fingerprint in there. So when it gets to the login screen, it just continues and logs you in automatically. Now, I get that. That sounds like, okay, that saved me 2 seconds. All I did was lift my arm up. But I'm telling you, when you use a device every day, it's these little things that just like, it's just cool. It's a streamlining of a feature. And the fact that they use precision touchpads, they did this thing, they use a really nice display, they did a 3x2, tells me this company is paying attention to where consumers, like what you guys, you folks are listening to, what you guys want in a device. And they did that. And for me, that's exciting because I like companies that do that, right? They're not tone deaf. They're in touch with what consumers want. And I like that about a company. So that's why I'm just talking Huawei up. I'm very excited to see what else they can do. I was worried last year with the Matebook tablet that it wasn't going to sell very well. And this may be a one-off for them, and if they got, we're done. Instead, they're back with 3 devices. And so I'm kind of just interested to see what this company does, because I think they have a lot of potential for making premium hardware that we haven't seen, from other companies.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's great that these hardware makers are doing this, because a few years ago they weren't, and it was rubbish. So now, good to see them trying at least, which is really nice. I definitely want to have a go on a Matebook. I'll try and see if I can get one. They're coming to the UK, right? And other countries,
yes.
Not just the...
Yeah, 6 countries, I believe, US, UK, and a couple other European countries. Starting around mid-July. You may have them in your country earlier. But yeah, be on the look for that. We'll also try to do the Matebook E tablet and stuff like that. But yeah, if you can go check one out, definitely do it. It's quality hardware, slightly cheaper, I would say, than HP and Dell, and definitely Surface. But yeah, it's just, hey, it's good to have options that are, quality ones. So.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to our next story. Windows 10 source code leaked. Everybody panic. This is the end. Windows 10 is going open source. Blah, blah, blah. No, not really. So last week, after the podcast, I think it was, so we didn't cover it last week, a very small portion of the Windows 10 source code leaked. And this caused outrage and panic across the media and fans and people on Twitter, oh my God, this is the end of the world. Turns out the leak isn't actually all that damaging. The leak comes from Microsoft's shared source initiative, excuse me, which is a program where Microsoft itself shares source code with third parties such as partners. And Microsoft knows that sharing anything with third parties is always a risk. So the stuff that they were sharing with partners was never going to be as damaging as if it was actual internal source code that they wanted to keep private. So nothing super important leaked. Some stuff about the Windows driver stack and whatever else leaked. So if you want to learn how to reverse engineer the Windows driver stack, go right ahead. But this leak itself was not as big or as crazy as some outlets were making it out to be. The Verge requested comment from Microsoft, and they said, our review confirms that these files are actually a portion of the source code from the shared source initiative and used by OEMs and partners. This news got muddled up with another leak that had been happening over the last few weeks and months now. So Beta Archive is a sort of a beta collecting website. So some people out there like to collect old builds of Windows from Windows 1.0 all the way up to today. And over the course of their existence, they've collected, I think, 70 terabytes worth of Windows builds. And over the last
I heard 2 billion petabytes of Windows source code.
So one outlet picked up this story and saw that there was a 32 terabyte dump of new stuff. This isn't new stuff. This is stuff that they had been collecting for a long time. This includes things like, ARM builds of Windows Server, which nobody cares about. A bunch of other stuff which nobody cares about, and of course a little bit of this shared source code, which
Guys, I got Azure leaked. I'm going to host my own cloud solution,
right?
Or something.
Everybody made a big deal about this, and it came at an interesting time as well, because the news the day before the leak was that 2 people in the UK were arrested for hacking into Microsoft and stealing a bunch of stuff. Now, Microsoft did come out and say that yes, something did happen, but no customer data was stolen. Just, builds, I guess. Builds and whatever else was stolen, which isn't really much of a concern. These old builds of Windows aren't really useful to anybody. They're just for collectors, as most of these people are.
Which is hilarious to me, by the way, that there are collectors of old operating systems.
I think it's interesting to see how Windows has developed and come along over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah, you never appreciate it until you see it side by side. But it just cracks me up that there's some guy, I just imagine a basement with a wall, and he's like pinning the moss, he's pinning the OSs to his wall, and it's like,
right.
That was a good build. This is the rare... This wasn't never released publicly, like that. I'm sorry.
Right.
Anyways, go on.
But so the arrest was, I believe it wasn't related to the source code leak. But it is interesting because Microsoft have a record of, well, it's not Microsoft arresting these people, obviously, but Microsoft has a record of going after people who have breached their servers and leaked stuff in the past. Back in 2012, Microsoft had police arrest one of their employees for leaking Windows 8 builds and something called the Activation SDK to a known leakster back in when Windows 8 was being developed. Microsoft doesn't really care about the builds leaking. It's a build. What are they going to do? Nothing. What they did care about back in 2012 was the Activation SDK, which would have been a damaging leak for Microsoft. This is what Microsoft uses to, build Windows Activation. And if this was to have leaked, people could have reverse engineered that and basically bypassed Windows Activation. So that's one of the reasons why back in 2012 that dude got arrested. But this leak that happened last week, the source code stuff, really wasn't that big of a deal, and a lot of people made a bigger deal than they should have. People were like, oh yeah, this is embarrassing for Microsoft. Oh, this Windows security is still doomed now. And this really wasn't that as much. It wasn't as bad as people were saying. So Windows source code leak, not really anything to be worried about. Wasn't as big or as scary as one might have originally thought.
Yeah, I thought that story was, again, it was just hilarious. It was a source that's not very, and was it the Register? They're not really known for their, this stuff is this was a classic case of someone just writing about something above their pay grade, right? And it's the same reason why I don't write expert articles on hacking or viruses or, security threats, because I just don't know that stuff. So I could pretend, but there's a point where you start, and I do this with my technical articles too, and I try to do, we talk about, Surface Pro and Surface Laptop and throttling and the TDP stuff. It takes me a long time to actually learn that stuff, but if I'm fibbing or screwing stuff up or using incorrect terminology, you get quickly caught on it. And that's what this kind of was, right? This was someone just not familiar with what this was, coming across it, putting 2 and 2 together and coming out with the wrong answer. I think it's funny because, obviously, so for those that don't know, the Windows 10 source code is this proprietary thing. It's like the Matrix, I don't know. It's just this mythical code that, it worked to get out there. All hell breaks loose. And so everybody was just like, oh my God, we're just going to, it's over. And then, of course, the Linux people came out and this is our time to shine. So it was really funny. And then, of course, Zach was coming out there saying hey guys, this actually isn't much. And the more we learned about it, the more silly it was. Now, it doesn't, something like that could happen, right? I suppose, there's always this risk, but Microsoft has been increasingly open sourcing and been sharing more of its code more than ever. So it's they're even now with the antivirus stuff, they're, going into more crowdsourcing and making that open as well. So I don't know. It was a funny story just because to see the hysteria and people, then people just want drama in their lives. And so it just sounds good. It's but yeah, it turns out it wasn't much. So lesson learned. we live in an age where, news stories break, but make sure before you retweet that story, before you make that snarky comment, you're confident that what you're reading on your screen is 100% accurate and that there's no room for error, because that's what we have to do. And, you guys are information citizens too. You need to do that as well for your own being. It would be a much nicer planet.
Honestly, I was annoyed I had to write that article.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, I used to have to do it all the time when things used to leak with hardware. I mean, for a while, I had people telling me that, like, what was it? That there was going to be like, oh yeah, the Lumia 850 was totally happening. Like, no, it's coming. They're like, I've seen it. I got a guy, he's telling me, he's like, the 850 is coming out. I'm like, the 850 was canceled like last summer. It's not coming out. Dude, I swear, I'm going to say that. And people are so adamant about this stuff, and then it doesn't happen. And sometimes leaks do come out, and they're like, oh, there it is, the 850. And people, they come out and they're weighing in on it, and then I have to write that article like, no, this thing is not happening. Sorry, folks. It was an old device. Yeah, it's frustrating when we have to do that. So it's just, we live in an age of, I don't know, information's.
Speaking of devices leaking.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Good segue, Dan. Thanks for that. Surface Mini. Now, this is a sort of mythical device in the world of Surface because it was rumored for a long time back in 2013. Then 2014 came around and we were just a few weeks away from it being unveiled. And then news broke that it was cancelled. And this broke the hearts of many, including myself. Because it was going to be an 8-inch, a mini Surface, an 8-inch device that had pen support, ran Windows RT, and was basically kind of Microsoft's pen-only version of Surface. Because up until, even now, we have the Surface Pro, which is a tablet that can be a laptop. That also has pen support. We have the Book, which is the laptop that can be a tablet, which also has pen support. We have the laptop that's just a laptop that also has pen support. We have the Studio that's a desktop but also has pen support. We didn't just have a device that was just fully pen. The Surface Mini was going to be that. It was going to be, it was going to shine with Windows RT and the OneNote app at the time, which would have been great. You could tap the top of the pen, it would just jump straight into OneNote. Really nice sort of note-taking device. And up until today, the public haven't actually seen the Surface Mini, which is a surprise considering how close it was to release. It was actually sent to some retailers and Microsoft had to recall them back and whatever. So it is a shock that this never actually got out until today. But we were able to get pictures of it and we have shown it off on Windows Central. Here is a picture of it on the video for those of you listening to the video podcast. It's a mini Surface. It looks like the Surface Pro 3 because it was going to be launched alongside the Surface Pro 3 back in 2014. It looks like it's covered in a case. It's not. That's actually the design of the Surface Mini. It's covered in like a felt-like material that has a kickstand built into it in 3 positions, just like on the Surface 3, the non-Pro edition that was released a year later. It has pen support, as I mentioned, runs Windows RT 8.1 with a Snapdragon 800 CPU and 1 gigabytes of RAM. So those specs probably don't sound too impressive for 2017. That's because they aren't. This is a device from 2014. Keep that in mind. Has a micro USB connection for charging and USB OTG. It has an expandable storage, a micro SD. Okay, it has a micro SD card expansion slot, which is really nice as well. It did have only 32 gigabytes of internal storage, so the expandable slot would have been helpful. I believe there might have been a 64 gigabyte model as well. It was also going to come in a bunch of different colors, including red, I believe blue, and some others, and black, as you can see here. Now, some people have seen this and gone, God, that's ugly. And sure, it's not the best looking Surface in the world, but keep in mind, the reason it has big bezels, and this is one of the things why many people were like, oh, it looks gross because it has small bezels. Big bezels. It was a pen-orientated device, and it's not easy to use a device without bezels and with a pen at the same time. So Microsoft needed to design something that could be held with one hand and then interacted with pen in the other. That's why it has slightly bigger bezels. The edges are chamfered a little bit, so it's easy to hold. And the texture that the case looks like, it's not a case, it is part of the design, it's sort of grippy as well. So it's easy to hold and whatever else. As I said, the kickstand has 3 positions, 1 viewing angle, which is pretty much what you would expect, then 1 in the middle, then 1 that sort of lays it down a little bit so you'd be able to type on it pretty easily. Now, there was no type cover accessory for it, which is, I guess, makes sense because it's such a small device, you wouldn't really be doing any typing on it anyway. But it did have a cover, which would just snap onto it and then you'd be able to close it and, cover the screen, I guess. And it also had a pen loop attached to the kickstand, which is nice. I know back in 2014, the pen loop thing was a bit of a joke for the Surface Pro 3 at least. But on the Surface Mini, it was actually attached, and you'd slip in the Surface pen, which worked with it was the Surface Pro 3 pen, I believe, that simply works on the Mini and the Pro 3. And it would have been a really nice product. Now, obviously, this was cancelled, and a lot of people have expressed their opinions saying, oh, yeah, it makes sense. This was cancelled. It was never going to sell well. And perhaps they're right. It still doesn't change the fact that I really want one in my life, and I have been recently looking for 8-inch devices with pen support. I do need one. I do need to be taking notes on a device that isn't the size of my Surface Book, for example. And I ended up picking up the what is it called? The New Vision thing, which I'll be talking more about next week. But it's a shame that this never made it to light. It was Windows RT after all, so there weren't really many apps in the Windows Store back in those days. And the 1 gigabyte of RAM thing, what were they thinking? I mean, that was never going to hold up for longer than 3 months before it started slowing things down. And I believe one of the reasons why this was cancelled, two reasons. One, they didn't really have a unique selling point that differentiated it enough from the other services that they had. Like the Surface Pro 3 was also a great note-taking device. And second, Windows RT was going to be killed a few months later anyway. In September 2014, just a few months after the Surface event, Microsoft announced Windows 10, and that was basically the first stepping stone towards killing Windows RT, because after Windows 10, there wasn't really any Windows RT updates, apart from that mini one that gave you the start menu, which was kind of rubbish. So perhaps it was a good idea, but I do hope that they return to this project at some point with Windows 10 on ARM and whatever else.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff about obviously the design choices that they had there. I don't know. It's kind of neat how they, with that felt material or whatever, to make it feel more comfortable to hold. That gets into kind of like what the Alcantara stuff is, right? You know, and what that was. But this idea of making something more personal and inviting and something you want to hold. And you can kind of see almost where that line of thinking started from. And that's kind of cool to see that. But yeah, I agree. You know, this was obviously between, I think, RT being canceled just, a few months later. Actually, we should say RT was kind of reborn as Windows 10S, but for practical, purposes, it was canceled. So that was really fascinating. Yeah, 1 gig of RAM. Obviously, the specs on this weren't very impressive. I think it would have been in one of those devices that it would have gotten attention. It would have been kind of neat. But at the same time, this was right in the market where 8-inch tablets were cratering. And the reason was, it was the same time that smartphone. By the way, this is funny. I found my HTC Titan and Titan 2 the other day, and they were called the Titan. And the thing, like, my OnePlus 3T dwarfs it, right? So what was once known as the Titan, it's like tiny now because displays got so big. And OnePlus is not even a big phone, right? I mean, the iPhone 7 there gets pretty huge. And so now we have these displays on these phones that are so massive that pretty soon people are like, wait, why do I have this thing and an 8-inch tablet, which is basically a phone without a phone in it? Why do I need 2 of these? So that market started going down. There's long-standing rumors that iPad minis, being canceled or just slowly faded out, sort of like the MacBook Air. And so this market was on its way down because the phones got so big. Apple knew that, which is why supposedly they held off so long on making a large screen to iPhone. They were like, oh, that's going to cannibalize our iPads. And sure enough, it did. So there was... Now, I want to be clear here. I think there is a market for this stuff. This was just going to be like it was literally a mini Surface. Like, that's what's funny about it. It's like, well, they took the Surface, made it smaller. They put a felt little cover around it and put a pen loop on, and it was nice, but there's no like real intriguing story to tell there. I think you take that same concept to 2017. We're going to 2018, you throw in Windows 10 on ARM, you throw some LTE in there, you throw in a new pen stuff we have. I think you can make a more intriguing device with a better story to tell. Like you think about in 2014 using the pen, that was back in, like you had OneNote and what else?
That was pretty much it.
Right? I mean, this is kind of funny, but when you think about it, there was not much back, especially in the store. At least Surface Pro users were able to go and download their Adobe apps or whatever. There's not much in the store, though, for drawing. Looking now in 2017, what we have for inking. Like, it's not just the apps in the store. The OS is much more robust for supporting this stuff. now that device starts to make a little bit more sense with the pen and inking story, which I think is really how you position that. So now this becomes a little bit more interesting. But
I said this before, Microsoft needs a product to showcase Windows on ARM. And I feel like a revived Surface Mini that perhaps looks a little bit better with updated specs and whatever else is the perfect product for that. Now, perhaps Microsoft has other plans, and maybe they're planning to fold the idea of a tablet and a phone together with, whatever they're working on for their mobile reboot. Who knows at this point? But I wouldn't be surprised if they did announce a Surface Mini later this year. Maybe they won't call it a Surface Mini. I don't know. Maybe they'll call it Surface. I don't know, Note.
Well, this is my personal opinion. I still think, and this isn't like insider thing. I'm trying to be, quirky or nothing. I still think they should just release one called Surface. Mm-hmm. It's a 10-inch one. It runs Windows 10 on ARM. It has strong pen inking support. Gets all-day battery life, LTE. Really cool device. And then you just have this other thing called Surface Pocket, which will be your phone / speaking of, hold on. I want to talk about just an amazing thing here.
Oh, okay. Dan stepped away. Surface Mini, super. I wish it would. I'm going to try and do a video on it. I am working on some stuff. We might do a sort of anniversary.
I had to go into my bag of goodies. So I gotta still review this. I gotta get markup so we can shoot the video. But this is kind of the future we're talking about, right? So this is the GPD 7. It's a UMPC. So let me open this up. I probably won't turn on. I don't know if the batteries.
It looks like a really big Nintendo DS.
And so this thing here, of course, the battery's dead. It does have an issue with standby and power. Yeah. Maybe it's turning on. No, battery's dead. But yeah, you can see full-size keyboard. And this has a 1920 by 1200 display on it, touch screen. And it runs, of course, an Atom processor, so not that great. But, look at the size of this thing. This is a full-on Windows 10 PC. It has USB-C, mini display port out, USB Type-A. So it has more ports than the Surface Pro and Surface laptop does. It's just a really cool device, and the build quality is fantastic. So now, this has flaws. Don't get me wrong. I can't really recommend people go spend the money for this thing, but I love seeing companies make stuff like this because it goes to show you just how far we've come along. And when you think about like what the Surface team can do and making something small, there's a lot of opportunity there.
See, with a product like that, what you could do if you refined it, you could take away all the ports. If you were designing a phone, that could also be something else. For example, you take away most of the ports, you'd leave the single USB-C port and the headphone jack, whatever. Get rid of the keyboard, replace it with another screen, and then have the hinge do that 360-degree thing. That could be a pretty cool phone if you revised its design and took away some of the hardware, make it a little bit thinner, obviously, by taking away that full-size USB port and whatever. Honestly, I know Jez Corden, export setter, would use that as his phone if it was revised, as I just described. He would totally buy that and use that as his phone every day, all day, and he would love that.
What? Sorry, that's my impression of Jez that he doesn't get.
And I'm pretty sure, with Microsoft's next mobile effort, I'm pretty sure they're going to do something like that. Whether it's, I'm sure they'll do something better than that. But I think it is an exciting time for smaller Windows-based devices. And it's unfortunate because I did write a sort of editorial opinion piece this week asking where are all the small premium Windows 10 tablets? There are none. There are seriously none. Back in 2015... early 2016, there were a few from some big names, HP, Dell, whoever else. They were selling, $400, $500 Windows 10 tablets that had pen support and felt really nice to hold and whatever else, high quality screens, and then they just sort of disappeared. And now the market's full of low end 8-inch Windows 10 tablets that are less than $120 with terrible screens, whatever. Now, the new vision I've got here is actually the best of the bunch. It has a really nice screen in it and feels really nice to hold, but it doesn't have pen support. Battery life isn't all that great. And I believe that may be partly due to Intel killing its Atom and whatever.
I think, this stuff, because Lenovo had some pretty killer, the ThinkPad. I have one. It's an 8-inch tablet, high-res display. You go look at it on the site. We covered it. I don't know if I actually fully reviewed it. But it had a really cool smart cover. It could flip, and it would just reveal the camera. Like, they did a lot of clever stuff, like Lenovo usually does, But it just wasn't... It was weird, too. It was running full Windows. It was back with... I think I did put Windows 10 on it now, but it was a Windows 8.1 device. But... it was just one of those devices where it's like Windows at the time was not quite a tablet OS, it was a full OS. So you could do like full OS stuff on it, but then you didn't have the IO to do that, right? It was like, this thing was awesome and tiny, but it was like, it didn't have a keyboard, so, or a mouse. So then it feels like, you're touching. It's just, I think Microsoft kind of learned that from their partners and said, all right, we're going to pull back on this kind of concept right now because it's a little wonky. And I think they're building out the OS now to do different stuff for that kind of hardware. I just don't think those tablets, and I get what people want and what you want too. And so you want this like digital note-taking device that's, has a really cool Windows 10 experience. But I think they're trying to balance off the I/O and ways to handle that. And I don't think that concept's dead, but I think it's they weren't going to win it.
I think it's waiting for ARM as well, because the Intel Atom chips were not great. And they're the only chips that really fit in a fanless, thin 8-inch device.
This thing is Intel Atom, and it actually has a fan in it, which is hilarious.
Right.
Yeah, like a little intake here and a fan. It gets a little warm too, So, that's a design limitation of today's technology. I'll love to see this device when it comes out with, ARM.
Yeah, I mean, once the Snapdragon 835 Windows 10 PCs start coming out, OEMs will be able to build much more powerful, small 8-inch tablets, and I think that might be what some of the OEMs are waiting for,
right?
Which hopefully is the case.
So I think that does it for this week. We want to stick around and do some quick Q&A. Remember, we do this live on Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Mixer and YouTube. So you can join in for the Q&As for that. We do not put those part of the recorded podcast. If you're listening to this later on July 4th or whatever, sorry about that. But tune in on that day for our podcast. You can also join us on Thursdays for the Microsoft Gaming Libations, where we get to play some video games, chill out, relax. You can ask questions, and we tend to give away stuff as well. I believe Jez Corden also does some daily streaming on mixer.com/Windows Central. So make sure you join in for that kind of stuff. We'll be back next week. Probably not as much news because of the holiday, but we'll make sure to cover what else is happening. Follow me at Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, R-U-B as in boy, I-N-O, and Zach at CACBOWDEN on Twitter. And thank you for listening and tuning in. Talk to you later, folks. Yeah.